In this video, I am going to share with you exactly how it is that we roll walls, and I'll share with you our favorite product to do so and the tools that we use. Hi, my name is Remy Boudreau. I'm a licensed painter, color consultant, owner of Expressions Painting, and founder of Expressions Painting University. So first off, the paint. The product that we really like working with is called Opulence from Sherwin-Williams. I believe it is called Cashmere in the United States, so just so you know in case you're watching from abroad. And the finish that we use is called Sheen Eggshell. And now eggshell is very standard when it comes to wall sheen level, but what we particularly like about this one is they have a low sheen option, and the difference is that if you look at it in a steep angle, if you imagine looking down a wall, perhaps even to a window, it's going to reflect a lot less light than a typical eggshell. What this means is that when it's all said and done, you are left with, of course, very washable, durable finish, because this is a premium product. Everything that you would still expect to see from an eggshell finish, but the low sheen makes it such a luxurious looking finish. I absolutely love it. It hides a lot of the imperfections that you may see over time inside a house, maybe a little blemish here and there. It's just a nice, luxurious finish. I absolutely love it. Now, as for the products, the tools, we've been working with the Wooster brand for our roller cages and poles since the very beginning, and I've been doing this since 1997. So, at the time, early in my career, Wooster was, I believe, the only company who had this quick release system where the pole and the cage were locked with some sort of a pin mechanism, and so it wasn't one of those poles that you needed to twist on. And the big benefit is that means that once you start working with the pole and the cage, it's one single unit, so it doesn't tend to want to unscrew a little bit at a time as you use it, which I remember working with screw-on extension poles at the time, at the beginning, and those tend to, you feel like you have to put a certain pressure to kind of keep it tight, and that ends up leaving ridges on one side or the other. And so with having a very sturdy pole attached to the cage makes working with it very, very efficient and much better quality too. Now, as for the roller sleeve, most times nowadays we work with a microfiber sleeve, a 13 millimeter. This I wouldn't say is new, but it's relatively new. It's not something that everyone is aware of. I'm sure most painters are aware, but most DIYs probably don't know that this is an option. And as long as you're working with a product that is known to cover well, like you're going, the grays or most colors, this is a great product to a great sleeve to work with, because it leaves a nice smooth finish. It does apply the paint a bit thinner, which is why I'm saying that it's best to use it with products that are known to cover colors that are known to cover well, because if you're trying to go from, let's say, a darker color to like a white, using a microfiber is not going to be your friend, because it's going to take 4, 5, 6, 7 coats, right? Because it's a thinner coat. So in those cases, you would be better off using the traditional woven roller, which does apply to paint a bit thicker. But thicker means a less smooth finish. So in most of the jobs, especially when we're talking with grays and beige or blues and greens, any of those kinds of colors, the microfiber is an absolute wonder. It leaves a beautiful, beautiful finish. So that's about it for the tools and the paint. When it comes to rolling, first of all, you'll notice that I rolled the into the tray first to prime, what we call prime the roller. So basically you just want to make sure that the entire roller sleeve is filled with paint, so that as you start to work and applying the paint on the wall, it doesn't want to suck into the middle of it because it's already full. So you want to first prime the roller, and then as you start working on the wall, then the paint will release from the roller to go onto the wall. So when it comes to applying the paint, notice that I first do like an angle going down where I unload the majority of the paint onto the wall, and then I start working my way from right to left, and then again from left to right. So I want to kind of break this down for you so you understand the logic of this. The goal, of course, is to have a nice even finish of the paint onto the wall. So because the roller is going to have a lot more paint at the beginning compared to as you start unloading onto the wall. Notice that because I did the angle on the top left, there's a lot of paint, and then on the bottom right, there's a bit less paint. So as I start to go from right to left, going up and down on the wall with my roller, that line that I first unloaded onto the wall is actually going to serve to kind of put back some paint onto the roller to kind of keep it at a very consistent amount of paint that you are working with. So the first pass is just to cover the wall as evenly as possible. So you first unload, and then the first pass going from right to right, from right to left, you just want to cover the wall. Now, on the way back, in my case, I go from left to right. This is where you're primarily focusing on leaving a nice, even finish. And that includes doing a bit of a fade out at the top, the bottom, and the right. And in this case, the right, because I started near the corner of the wall. And so what I mean by this is the brush and the roller basically don't have the same finish. So it's very important that you leave a fade out in both the roller and also when we're going to be talking about the brush. Now, I do want to touch here. If you haven't been following along, you might be wondering why I'm rolling and the walls still aren't cut in with the brush. There's a very important reason why we do this in a lot of cases, and I do explain this a little bit, but the idea is it's a color illusion that can happen, which I'll touch towards the end of this video. But for now, just know this is only done on the first coat. When it comes to the final coat, we will absolutely need to cut in first and then roll second. But in our case here, you notice that the cutting in is not still yet done, but we still need to be aware of that fading that needs to take place so that it's a nice blend in. So the texture of the wall, of the roller, is going to be faded out on the final pass when I go from left to right. Now, if you haven't been following along, this is actually a video series where I take from start to finish exactly how it is that we paint a room or an entire house step by step. So if you want to revisit and see all these videos, you can check on YouTube. I did create a playlist, so as we add new videos, these will all be in order. Or even on our social pages, you can kind of go back and see them all. They're being released in order. But I did want to briefly touch again on the illusion that can happen, and which explains why we end up rolling the walls first in a lot of cases. So if you see here the first image, this was actually the wall paint when I first just spot primed all the repairs. Okay, now notice there's a bit of a beige tint to it. So if I take now the same wall, the same lighting, the same picture, the same everything basically, and you look at it after the whole thing was painted, look at how much more gray the color now looks. If I put them side by side, now you'll see this doesn't even look like the same color. And this is a very common issue in painting, and it has to do with the environment. So basically, anytime you're choosing color, the environment plays a big factor. But in this case, the blue walls are not part of the environment once it's all said and done. But while it's still kind of still there, it does impact how we interpret the little bit of paint that is there. And so that's why typically on the first day we're gonna make sure that we roll out most of the walls, especially when there's a big color change, because we want our clients to have a good idea what the color looks like, not an illusion that's not giving you the correct interpretation of what the color will look like. So this is one of the biggest reasons why we roll first in a lot of cases. So I hope that you got value in this video, and if this is something that interests you, next week we will be looking at cutting straight lines without the use of any tape. See you then.